I'm Robin Mace, Metro's Chief Data Officer. I want to welcome you to July's Data Coordinators meeting, where we are going to be learning about probably the department that is the most digitally mature in all of Metro Nashville, which is Planning GIS. And Jennifer and Micah, whose name I always mispronounce, will be presenting information about what they do. Before we get to that, I would like to let you know, encourage you to visit the Open Data Portal, data.nashville.gov. We are adding new data sets every month, and we're expecting to add air quality and business licenses after our August 3rd steering committee meeting, as well as a few others. So I encourage you to keep checking back. I also want to let you know, and next month we'll have a demonstration of this, of a product that is going to debut in support of the Open Data Portal. Socrata's name for that product is called Citizen Connect. Every city has branded it differently. Baton Rouge calls it Open Neighborhoods. Chattanooga calls it City Insider. So if you have any ideas about, I was thinking My Metro, for how you might name this product, which is basically a simple mapped-based viewer of selected places and data sets. And so we're working on getting some public safety in there before it debuts, sort of towards the end of August, early September, but y'all will get a special preview at next month's meeting, which is, I believe, going to be on August 16th. Somebody correct me if they know that I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday, August 16th. The next 3 meetings after today are going to be in this room. So that's actually more convenient for me in terms of just coming downstairs to make coffee and provide treats. And hopefully it's good for y'all in terms of parking and ease of accessibility. Next month, our featured topic is going to be storytelling, and we are most likely going to have somebody from the commercial tech community here to take us through that. And actually, I believe Jennifer's going to do a little bit of storytelling, overview with one of the products that they have in planning. And I think that's all for me. Are there any questions about data coordinators, data steering, publication before we get started? And if not, then I'm going to let Jennifer take the floor, and I am going to ask you, if you know that you have identified outstanding data assets, public data assets, please get with me after the meeting so we can figure out how to get those onto the Open Data Portal. In September, we're going to begin what will become an annual inventory, where we ask you to kind of push the boundaries of your identified data sets into new, possibly unidentified worlds, because right now Metro's master inventory consists of 475 data sets, and I know with a city of almost 700,000 citizens and a $2 billion budget that we have a lot more than 475 data sets. Many of them will be public. So I will be contacting most of you individually heading into September and then through September and October while we try to, as I said, expand out the inventory. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer Higgs.
All right. Do I have to? Okay. Can I talk here? All right. So yeah, I'm Jennifer. You've met me before. So I'm just going to talk a little bit just about our section in case people don't know what we do. And then I'm going to let Micah talk. He's going to talk about the really cool stuff that we're doing, 3D, animations, things like that. And then we're going to show you a little bit about Arcgis Online and how we're using it. But I'm Jennifer Higgs. I've been with the planning department as the GIS director. I was able to self-title myself. So GIS director, I've been there for 20 years. When we started when I started there, it was we were right here in this section, mapping services. I was hired into mapping services. They had GIS since about in the 1980s. Let me see if I can find that. Why is it not going forward? Yeah. So they had moved from their paper maps which are old Mylar maps that they did all their parcel mapping on. In the 80s, they had that data digitized and brought into a GIS system that was called Synercom at the time. I was hired in the 90s. In the mid-90s, they moved to Esri, or in the early 90s, and when I was hired, we had just undertaken basically getting everybody in Metro to use the same property maps. Because before I started, Public Works was keeping their own copy. They were getting copies of the plats and the deeds and mapping them. and we were mapping them, and we were the official maps. Water Services was mapping them, and we got everybody into one system that everyone was using the same parcel data. In the late 90s, in 1999, we actually went online with our first parcel maps online. So we were one of the first cities probably in the country that had online property maps that you could go up. And they functioned kind of pretty similar to our parcel maps today, in that when we went online, we said, we're not just going to show you who owns the property today. We're going to show you who has always owned the property. We're going to show you how the property is split over time. And we're going to show you assessment history, and we not just what's current, but so you can look back. Because our goal was to get title searchers and real estate people to not call in the office so much, and they could get their answer online. And it did. It really reduced our calls. It increased the amount of work we could get done in the office because we weren't answering calls. In 2000, that's when they said my career was having babies. I left from my first child. I came back. They actually created a GIS section and split us from mapping. So mapping stayed over here in the basement of Howard, and we moved over to Lindsley and did GIS over there, and actually had a GIS, some staff to work specifically on maps. Brian came to work in that section in the GIS, and then he left us for schools, but they got quite a treat there with Ryan. Ryan started our first 3D stuff in the planning department when he was here. From there, we moved on to, we were the first relational database was DB2. That was our first implementation to move off the mainframe and off the old Arcinfo style stuff, and we moved there. And then in 2006, we moved with codes and everybody to Oracle, and then last year, we all moved to SQL Server and CityWorks. So we've had quite a migration of stuff. We're always moving forward. So right now we have two sections. We have I'm the manager of both sections. So we have the GIS section that does application development, analysis. We do 3D modeling and animations. We manage the database and access for everybody to the database. We manage our Arcgis online accounts. And then we have the mapping section that pretty much maps the parcels for the county, because that's what everybody is the base layer pretty much for all the departments are the parcels, and the zoning and things like that. So they map those things for us. And so there's a total of, I think, 9 of us doing GIS. And right now we've had a couple interns this summer and things. So it's pretty fun. So mostly what we do is, lately we've been doing a lot of application development. We've built our own applications to use inside to keep property maps up to date. So we build our own tools. 2 of us are programmers. We do stuff in C#, and then we do most of our own internet programming. So most of the applications that you see online, we've developed in-house. There are a few that we've used from Esri templates that we put up. For example, Parks Finder, our Parks Finder app was a template from ESRI that we implemented here. Our polling place finder that got a lot of use during the election last year, that is a template from ESRI. And then we've built our own maps, like our parcel viewer. That's the one that is used probably as much by internal metro agencies as by the public. We're looking at maybe creating something for internal users to because our goal was to kind of separate the public access to data from the internal access to data, so that we wouldn't be competing with each other for resources. But this is probably used by as many internal metro people that it is external. So we're looking at new ways to give people access, web-based access to our maps internally, instead of using the ones that the public uses. And so this is just some of the stuff that we can do. And I'm going to show you a little bit. This is our 2 story maps that I'm going to talk about when I mention ArcGIS Online. We've done one for the Cherry Blossom Festival. We've done it for Nashville Next, for the planning department. We did one for the libraries. And so I'm going to go through kind of showing you how easy it is to set up your own story maps. We actually have people now in the mayor's office using Arcgis Online, as well as our office. So we'd like to get more of you guys using it, and I'd like to show you how to do it, and then maybe get you started. And I'm going to let Micah talk, because he's got the most exciting.
All right, my name is Micah Taylor. Like she said, I've been working in planning for 2 years and 6 months now, and I'm actually leaving in 2 weeks. I'll be staying on part-time for a long enough period to train somebody else that we're looking to come in my place. So the stuff you're going to see today, we actually plan on continuing to use it. But what I'm going to talk to you today about is how we can take GIS data as well as some static 3D modeling and create models of the city, like stuff that may not be built yet, that may not, be approved yet through zoning and things like that. And I want to show you how we go about creating those models that's different than from your typical manual way of creating models, say in SketchUp or Blender or something like that. And I'll talk about how we use these models, how we actually derive some information product that we can put out, to the public or planning commission or community meetings or city officials, and also talk a little bit about what's coming in the future, what the department plans to do with this kind of technology next. And I believe later on we're going to talk about more of the online presence for 3D stuff, which is really the fastest growing part of the whole world of like 3D GIS and 3D modeling, especially in city planning.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Just trying to lower it a little bit.
It's okay.
Oh, you can turn it down if you want.
Okay for you filming? Sorry, Micah.
That's okay. So basically how this is different than just your typical 3D modeling is I take the GIS data and the attributes and the data that are tied inside of it and use that to procedurally generate a 3D model. Meaning it's using a code as opposed to like a programming language you're used to that parses through tables and data and somehow manipulates data. This particular code is used to manipulate geometry. So it parses through points and lines and polygons to create different things. Well, your GIS data is already a shape, right? It's a point, it's a line, it's a polygon. So this code can take that and procedurally generate it into something that's 3D without you having to click and drag and draw as if you were, trying to make a 3D character of Ryan, say, in a video game software. It's all done with code as opposed to having to do it manually, so you can get something out to the public faster. And without going into too much technical detail, so basically like in the top left there, say you have just a footprint of a building that sits on a map with a simple code that extrudes it to a certain height, with the height being stored in that GIS data within that footprint. It can create that simple block. And with the code actually creating the block, you didn't have to like physically click and create that. So if you were doing this for like say 50 building footprints, you wouldn't want to individually click each one. You just drop this code on all 50 of them. It looks for the height of that building and extrudes it out of the ground to that exact height. So take these 4 parcels, for example. If you use the procedurally generated model that I was just describing, let's say you're texturing it with grass, trees, and buildings, but you want it to look a certain way based on the zoning that's applied to that certain parcel. Well, if you go in and change the zoning attributes, say they're thinking about changing the zoning to mixed use, you can see it'll put like mixed use buildings or apartments or a park or whatever you want to write inside the code. So you don't have to manually model anything. You can generate that kind of stuff on the fly. Let's see, fast forward a little bit. Oh yeah, so like for this one, even with street plans, like say you're your lane width, your street width, your sidewalk width, how many bus stops you want, how many trees along the side of the road. It can all be changed on the fly. I think in this video, I add a bus stop or something to this sidewalk, and it's completely coded inside of the software, so you don't have to manually model anything. You're just changing attributes basically inside of the GIS data. And you can see how fast it'll generate like a complete scene that you then have to use in some kind of information product for whoever you're wanting to show it to. A big one, especially when we first started using this stuff, was Broadway. So say you take Broadway, you bring in your street center line data, your footprints, as well as some static models that we may have got from an architect or actually had to go and hand model in SketchUp or something like that. When you mix them together within that same software, you can procedurally change things for Broadway as well. And at the time, we were really looking at taking away the parking in the outside-most lane and dedicating that to sidewalk so it would be more pedestrian friendly down on Broadway. And having the ability to change different street designs and street plans on the fly like that, especially if you have a meeting tomorrow and you need to change this model today, it was really useful being able to use the coded version of 3D modeling to do that. So I think, yeah, there's various things. You can add street lights. I forgot what I changed in this video. Yeah, cars, you can add traffic and people. It can get as detailed as you want to get. Sometimes it doesn't have to be detailed, if you're just wanting to show a height, but for this particular project, we wanted to show like exactly what it would look like. Now, a lot of the times when we create these models, all they want is a screenshot, right? Something they can put inside of a PowerPoint to take to a planning commission meeting or to a community meeting, something like that. But what we started getting into, I guess, a little over a year ago was something that's more than just a screenshot to put in a PowerPoint. So this is we're going to go into the online portion of it a little bit more later, but this is an example of same software used to create the model that I was showing you earlier, but this is a web scene. So this is an actual website that we're working on right now, where you'll be able to see development that's proposed or under construction currently. And what it is it's a link. It's a website you can share as an app, but when you click a certain building, it'll report things to you, like who is it under development, how much does it cost, who's the developer, what's the status, anything that you have in the attributes of that building.
So if anybody's seen Crane Map,
yeah, it's like a 3D version of the Crane Map. Yeah.
So is Crane Map Nashville Business Dailies?
I think that's Biz Journal.
Biz Journal.
Yeah.
So basically, it's Crane Map or Crane Watch, and it shows you where all the projects are.
Right. It's like a 3D version of that. But some of the ones that we're putting in ours, though, we've got from various sources besides Crane Map. Crane Map's good to go look at to make sure that what's there and what we have are kind of on the same page. So I think we want to put this out publicly at some point. Okay, so with the Broadway project, what we decided to do, because everybody's going to use YouTube, is create an animated video of what the new street plan would look like. And there was at one time a plan to extend the bike lane down First Avenue. So we were able to take that same model, pull it into an animation software, and your world's already created. So all you have to do is add the walking people, the bicycles, the cars, whatever it is you need into that set. And there's a not really Disney Pixar, but pretty dang close, that you can put on YouTube and then send it out across the Nashville network, or I believe this was on the Nashville Next YouTube channel or something like that. Okay, so after the video, that prompted our director of planning, Doug Sloan, to really want to adopt some of the new modern visualizations for city planning, which was really unusual for, I guess a government to do. But what is it he always says? He says he wants people to understand the story we're trying to tell. And so I guess the best way to do that is to put them in a close to reality version of some plan. So at the time, we couldn't really justify buying like an Oculus Rift or HTC Vive, some video game system for a government office, but the Samsung Gear VR was under $20 for a headset. And what we could do was use the game itself to power off of your phone. And I actually brought one, and so later on you could put it on and look inside the scene if you want. But it had its limitations. It was limited by the power of the phone. So if you had too much detail in your model, it would lag. But given that we were only going to look at, just Broadway, all the surrounding buildings, we could drop the detail. Drop the amount of, we may not put overhang signs and window ledges in that model, but everything on Broadway we kept very detailed, and it was able to run that virtual experience inside of a headset that you could run with your phone. So basically, from that modeling software I was talking about in the beginning, you take that model into this Unity gaming engine, which is a software for creating video games. And what it does is you can put a virtual person, what they call a pill, down inside of that scene. You can say how tall is the person, how wide is the person, do some code adjustment to make it, instead of having to click like an Xbox remote, you click your phone screen or the directional pad on the headset. And what that would do was give you the option to say, when I click my phone screen or I click that directional pad, I need something to happen. In this case, it was walk. Because you can't have people on Broadway physically walking around with a headset on, not knowing they're going. But they can turn within the scene, but they wouldn't be able to physically walk. They would just have to tap the button, and it would simulate as if you were walking. Now, for the sake of everybody not having a headset, I recorded it as if you actually had the headset on in this video. I can't remember if it's in the next one or not. Yeah, so this is something what you might see if you had the headset on. And when you tap the side of the thing, you walk down the street and you can see it shrink down to 4 lanes, wider sidewalks and planters. It's just a different street design for Broadway. Don't go telling everybody this is what we're fixing to do to Broadway, because it's not. This was totally conceptual, but it was a way to get people, as Doug always says, to see the story we're trying to tell, as opposed to trying to draw it in a PowerPoint and everybody thinking something different. And there's a certain aspect to this virtual reality stuff that they're fascinated with the technology, so you've got their attention. They're there, they're looking at it, they're more involved and more educated in making a decision on what they think about it or not. And this one is also conceptual, not something we're going to do, but the old baseball field next to Fort Negley. This is if you're on top of Fort Negley, standing on one of the lookout decks. And this is what I'm working on right now. So whatever they decide to do with that baseball ground, if they want to see it in 3D, how the view is going to be affected from the top of the fort, they'll be able to see it. So this is different height scenarios and massings for the current baseball stadium ground. But I don't think anybody knows what's going there yet, but when they do, they may come to our office and say, hey, we're ready to show this to the public. We need you to put this architect's model into this scene. It's easy to drop that in. And it's not a very good looking trail, but you can go to a different spot along the hill and see it from different angles. And at one time, I think this plan's already been scrapped, but at one time they were talking about starting the Gallatin Road light rail at Rivergate Mall. I believe now it's where Briley and Gallatin Road cross, I think, is where the light rail plan is to start. But this is actually an old demo that whenever they first started talking about the rail on that corridor, they were talking about having the station at Rivergate Mall. So I wanted to create one that we could use in community meetings so you can see what it would be like if there were a train station right there at that mall. So this is actually at that Rivergate Mall intersection on Gallatin Road. And it has that same effect, where you can tap the directional pad and walk down the road. And I made it go really fast so you can feel like you're moving as fast as a car if you want to. You can get up on the platform as if you're loading a train. And if you spend the extra money and you actually buy like a computer system as opposed to running off your phone, you can completely animate it to interact with the train. Open the door, walk inside, have a seat, things like that. But this was enough to get the point across for us. It's this community meeting, and they all got canceled anyway, so we never actually used it. Okay, and the second thing we adopted that's different than the virtual reality is augmented reality. Who's familiar with Pokemon Go? That's what that is augmented reality, where you're looking through your phone camera and you're seeing something there that's not really there. Basically what it is. But using that same software, that same gaming platform, we were able to take like all the buildings and construction that's going on First Avenue and be able to make it to where when you tap your phone screen, it switches between the developing buildings and what the finished product will look like. So basically using that same code that we use to walk, you change it. Say now I don't want a walk function, I have the phone in my hand at this point. I want, whenever you tap the phone screen, to cut one model off and turn another model on. And you can put as many models as you want in there. Say you want to see 10 different scenarios, you could just keep clicking through them and see it on there. So if you see here, it should change between the finished product and then the cranes and the constructed buildings and everything else. Now this, to me, I think was a better route to go because a lot of people that I notice, they don't want to put the thing on their head, right? So with this, it's less intrusive. You're looking through your phone or your tablet's camera, and it was less intense on the phone. You can get a more detailed model into your scene by using the augmented reality than you can in the virtual reality. Because the virtual reality, you have to build the whole world you're in, whereas with this, you're actually seeing the outside, but just augmented something in the scene. And, oh yeah, we have some examples of that too that we can show you a little bit later, because the way that we've been using it, I'm going to show you a video anyway. This may crash the PowerPoint. If it does, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is an example of like a printed map. We just plotted out some imagery. We set it on a table in a conference room, and whoever's phone, in the department has this application inside of it, they can point the phone at the map on the table and actually see the buildings coming out of the paper. Now to me, this was a lot more useful because most meetings are held in a conference room or some meeting room. You're not actually going to be on site of these places where they're being built most of the time. And this was really popular whenever we first started using it.
This is very Star Wars-like.
Yeah.
It felt like we were using it different times.
Yeah, this one's actually, well, they were proposing a bridge to go from the Gulch crossing over close to, what's that station, the brick? Cummins Station, yeah. And there was two different bridge designs, so it's hard to see in this video. I actually have it so you can come up here and look at it later, but you can click and go between the two different bridge designs, crossing the train tracks. So that was something that they wanted to look at one time.
Have they selected the design for the bridge?
I have no idea. That's another thing. Don't run off and say that any of this is set in stone, because it's, they come ask me because they want to see it, and it may be for, a city official, it might be for the public, and some of this stuff has been changed, 1,000 times since I've created these applications. But, it's just a good way to see things in a more close to reality way as opposed to, drawings and sketches. This is actually the same web map I showed earlier with the development, like proposed and under construction, but in the augmented reality platform where you can have a map on your table. What's interesting about this too is you can print it on a bar napkin or you can print it on a billboard, and it will scale the size of that model based on the size of the map that you have printed out. And all it has to do is recognize that that map is at that location.
Right, so we could put these maps, we could put something like this. We could put a map on our static maps page. Someone could download and print the map on 8.5 by 11. We can publish this app where they can go download the app and they can use it themselves with their own little thing. So,
right.
I mean, this is not ultimately where we want to go with augmented reality. We want to be able to actually look out at things. But this is a start for augmented reality, especially in meetings and stuff.
Right. And this is a little bit more I guess, academic, but I had to present at a conference last week, so I threw it in there. But this is, I think, is kind of the science of why this works in city planning. It's the idea of corporal intentionality, where if you physically have to move your being, whether it be in augmented reality or virtual reality, you're more connected with your own environment. So whenever you come to say, hey, I don't like the wider sidewalks, I do like the wider sidewalks, you know, this, you know, you can make a more educated guess because you've kind of, in a way, you've physically been in that scene as if it were already built. And, you know, it's been really useful. Like the parking day event that we had, who's familiar with the parking day thing? It's where they take a, you know, any, what is it, like a government agency or a business or whoever can rent a parking space on Broadway and redevelop it into something that's more, that's not parking. You know, it could be a, you know, like a park or a place to hang out with games in it, whatever. But we took out the parking at,
We took out a whole block.
A whole block.
A whole block
in front of Acme Feed and Seed and the Rock Bottom Cafe and the other side of the road where you seen the blue paint that one time. That was our department. So we took the virtual reality, and down there, the day of the parking day, the actual day of the event, you could go down, put the headset on, and see what it would be like if all of Broadway were finished that way with wider sidewalks. And I think we got great feedback. We had a stack of papers this tall where people, after they would put on the headset, would draw what they liked about it and what they didn't like about it, what they would add, what they would take away. And that was a big, I guess, proof of concept for us. Like, okay, people will use this stuff if it's there and available.
And it really was, but it was a collaboration between us and Public Works,
right,
and the mayor's office. Parks put all the plants and everything out to make it a really, and the tables to make it a really attractive environment to what it could be on there.
Right. And, you know, this is kind of the list of what I just went through of what we have, but what we would like to do in the future, I mean, I'm leaving, but assuming we get somebody in there that's going to continue along this kind of new technology, we would like to create an augmented reality application that you could actually go and download, where if you're on site of something that's going to be built, you can hold up your phone and see it at the actual location. That's different than the paper map version that we've been using. This is more, you know, on-site geolocation based, but we tested a product to see if it would work, and it did. We were able to pull in, what did we put in there? A public art, yeah, we pulled in a public art data set from online, and it would augment little icons above it all over the city through your phone camera. So it is doable, but we haven't bought or tested anything enough to put out a public application yet.
So right now we are using this in planning commission meetings. What Micah does, we are using in planning commission meetings. Recently, there was a hotel line going in somewhere on West End, and we use it to show what would that hotel, with its height, what would the view be from other locations versus what they could do with regular zoning. You know, the zoning today, what would that allow them to, what would it allow them to do? So they come to him every time, you know, most times when there's something somewhat controversial, but it's because people can't see what you're telling them unless you really can show them. So, you know, you can talk about, well, yeah, from this height, when you look out, you can still see the Capitol if you're standing in this neighborhood. But just saying that versus showing them standing in a location, looking out at the horizon, putting the new development in, and being able to pan around and say, now see that you can still see the Capitol. That building does not block from this view shed. So it allows us to do a lot of stuff like that. And there's just endless number of applications for this. You know, does a new building block, if you're putting it next to a park, does it create shade? Does it put that park in shade for the, you know, most of the day? Because you can change the time of day in these applications and stuff. So we are really, really, really sad that Micah is leaving us, because Micah has he's not just, you know, you can hire somebody in that's good at what they do, but Mike is excited about what he does and is thinking about it all the time. So he's thinking about it when he's riding his bike. He's thinking of new stuff. He's texting me, look at this application. when he's at home on the weekend. So we hope that we can find somebody with that same kind of excitement to bring in to work with us. He is going to hopefully stay on part-time. He's going down to get his PhD, so he'll be Dr. Taylor in a few years. And
assuming I make it.
Assuming he makes it and doesn't get hired off somewhere to make lots more money before he gets his PhD.
And, what we're showing you is a lot, big ticket stuff like VR and AR, but really truthfully the thing that's going to grow first that could benefit you, I guess the data community, is the online stuff, which we are going to talk more about. And even with 3D, the online stuff's growing faster than the virtual reality and the augmented reality. So
Esri is developing, I think, with their next version, and augmented reality will be built into some of it. We did just the other day download an app from one of Esri's partners that is an augmented reality. So if anybody's got an idea of something they would like to see, I would like somebody to be able to walk down the street in Nashville and look at a bus stop and the bus stop pop up and then click and see the schedule. I want them to be able to see our little signs around the city for new development, for zoning requests and stuff. Be able to walk down and look at that building and go, oh, there's a zoning request for it. What's it about? With their phone as they're walking. I think, we could do something like that today. It's a little bit clunkier. It's getting better every time we do it. And so Esri does actually have a product now that we downloaded it the other day to try to get it to work. And I actually did get all our metro buildings to pop up with little icons everywhere the different departments were sitting. But that's as far as it would do. It wouldn't give me any more information. So, that's where we're trying to go with it. There's so many things we want to do, but limited amount of time and to do all the exciting things that are out there. Yeah. So we're going to show you a little bit about Arcgis Online. So Arcgis Online is a cloud-based system for sharing your data. It's for sharing your GIS data, for sharing apps, for creating apps, for collaborating with other departments, with other cities, with other state agencies and things like that. We have implemented to a small extent. Schools showed you that they're implementing part of Arcgis Online. We have some apps that we've created out here. We have some data that we've published out here, but we're really not as into it as we would like to be. And to do that, to be as into it as we'd like to be, we need to get other metro agencies to use it. We have some licensing that we can share to get people started, and then decide whether they want to buy their own licensing. So this is the online version. What we'd really like to move to is the internal version, which is Portal. That would take more licensing, more resources, computers, money to do that. So that's in our future plans, is to move to Portal, which is an internal version of this. But we've set up our own Arcgis Online. Some of these, you got to make sure you create little thumbnails for it, but I haven't done that. But we've some of our featured content, we've registered some of our apps that we've built outside with the app, and we've done data. But I just kind of want to show you, I just want to go through a little scenario. So we talked about story maps. So Esri's been doing story maps for several years. I think our first story map probably we did 5 years ago. And it's a way to take a quick point set of data, or not even a point, but a quick set of data, and quickly tell your story. The libraries came to us, they're like, we have all these photos that we got about the flood, and it was an anniversary, and there was an anniversary of the flood. We want to put out just a story map with all the different images that people have shared to us about things that happened during the flood. During Nashville Next, we put up a story map about showing the different plans that were coming out for the different concept maps and things that were happening during the Nashville Next process, where people could look at it. We used a story map template to do that. So I want to just show you how easy it is in Arcgis Online to create a simple story map. So I've started a map, and I'm going to, I can go in here and I can added a layer from a file. So what I've done is I went to the data.nashville.gov, and I went to the public art, and you can download that as a CSV file. So I downloaded the CSV file. Let me go find it and show it to you. And you do have to do a little bit of formatting. Each one of these story maps that you do will tell you what your data format needs to look like. So it was pretty simple to just go in. Oops, I can't get to it. And I didn't have to add any data because the online data set, sorry, I wasn't very prepared here. The Arcgis on, I'll probably take this a while. The Arcgis, or the open data portal for public art, had all the fields that I needed to put them online. They had mapped locations, so that's one really important thing. They had the lat long. They had the name of the art piece. They had a description of the art. So I formatted this a little bit, but you could have probably taken the data pretty close to it. But I formatted it. I said I want to have the list the artist, and then list the what type of art it was, and then the description. So I did a little bit of formatting on it, and then the Open Data Portal also already had the links to the new images of the art. So I had to format that a little bit out of Open Data Portal, what the format of the URL to the pictures were. But I created this little CSV file that it literally took me about 20 minutes to format it. So then I can go get that file. Now I'll have the same problem right here. All right, so it goes and it adds all my points because it's got a lat and a long, so it's got the coordinates of the data, and it's asking me what I want to do a little bit but I'm going to use this map in a story map, so I don't have to do any formatting to the data here. All I pretty much need to do is save this layer down and say I'm using this layer in my story map. So I'm just going to do here and say I'm done. So there's the points, and I'm going to save. And every time you save a map in here, they want you to give just some tags. So this is so other people can find your maps. So I'm going to say Nashville art, and then a little description, and we'll just copy this same thing. So, and I have my stuff arranged in folders so I can find it later. So I'm going to save it in this folder I have set up for myself that says for web apps. That means don't go and mess with those, because if I mess with those maps, one of my web mapping applications isn't going to work anymore. So I kind of arrange my data, and it has a whole way. Each user has their own set of folders they can create and arrange their data the way they want it. They can access other data that we've published and create and put together their own maps. So now I've saved this, and I'm going to go share it. So I'm just going to right now just share it within my organization. And then I'm going to just go down here and say, and I also want to create a web app with it. So there's tons of different templates out here that you can create web maps for. You can create just an informational map of your locations and directions on how to get there. Or we can go in there and say build a story map. And I have formatted this data to build a story map tour. So I'm going to say that's what I'm going to create. And I'm going to go public art story map. And, oops. I'm going to use that same thing, and I'll just do the same thing again. Here and put me in a basically initializing the tour, it's going to put me in an editor to build that map. And basically, it's created my story. It's created my map for me that I can put out. I can edit a few things. I can go into settings and say, I really would rather have the pictures on the right. I personally like it better that way. That's how I always do it. I can go in and change some of the color schemes. I can change and go in here. And I could go to the arts page and pull out their URL to their logo and put their logo on there. I can change what text I want here. So I would maybe do a Nashville story map. So I can change the colors here and say, well, the highlighted one I want in red. So, and then I can save this. I can go back. Now, if I go back to my content, I now have an application. Got it. Public art map right here, my web mapping application. So when I click on that, it gives me some options. Before I share it out to the public, I probably want to fill out some of this stuff, like who created the map, the application, what's it about, the kind of general information so people that go to it can know about it if they want to use it. And then I can just go and view the application. Now it's going to do it a little weird. It's going to put this little thing up, do I want to go into builder mode, because I'm logged in as me. But if I shared this out with the public, they wouldn't see this little button over here to the top because they're not the editor. And now I have, that simply, I have a story map that I can publish out and for people to see where all the art is. You can change, there's a few little things you can change in here to whether it zooms to the location on the map. You can add other layers in the map that you want to have turned on at the same time. So if we zoom in close, you want the building's footprints to come on or something like that, you can do that. We can also then, there's versions of these to create these maps in 3D. So now in ArcGIS Online, you can take the 3D scene with the buildings that we've done in Nashville and do your maps in a 3D environment, these same kind of story maps in a 3D environment.
And that's really new, so we don't have any of that.
We don't have any of this show, but it's possible. And so it's simple. There's tons of different types of maps. So when I go back to my map,
can you rearrange the points?
The order of them? Yeah. It's going to be whatever the order they are in your CSV file. Yes, and it's going to be whatever they are in your CSV file. So you order them in your CSV file. And this particular story map requires the CSV file. Some of the other story maps will use data. You can pull your data and load it up as a shapefile, or it's not actually a shapefile, but for the better understanding of it, you can load your data up there into the cloud and use it. Some of them will use feature services that we already have published. So we could publish the data on our server. You could add it in and create a map from it. So each different story map has different. I've been complaining to them about the tour map for a while because it takes that CSV file, and I'd rather use data I already have mapped. I already have the public art locations mapped in my GIS system, so I really don't want to take a CSV file of them and load them up. But it's really good for people who don't have their data in any kind of format. Yes?
How are the images fueled for that story map? How are they being inputted into them?
So in data.nashville.gov, they've stored those somewhere in Nashville.gov. So they have a folder in Nashville.gov URL, but it'll link to pictures if you have them in Picasa, on YouTube, Flickr. So if you have a photo library and any of those things, we have our own web server. So the story maps we've done, we've created a web directory storing those pictures, and we link to those URLs for the pictures. But it does take a URL, and you can create small little pictures to go along the bottom, which I recommend. If you were really doing it, I did this really quickly, I would recommend you creating smaller versions because it makes it run faster when the little picture's at the bottom. But we did this for the Cherry Blossom Festival. Every year they send us new locations of planting sites for cherry trees, and we add those new sites, and so that site is growing. There is a limit, like with this story map, of 99 points. That's why you saw an error when I loaded the data up. There's actually like 144 public ARC sites or something, so it truncated it at 99. But there's different story maps you can use. And if I go back out to this one and say share, oops, save. Oops, let me go. Let's just pick a different. I have some other maps out here. And yep, it's all the Esri templates are built to just work perfectly on the mobile. All of their applications, all their templates. Now, if I build an application, I have to go in, like the parcel viewer, parcel view application I built myself because none of the tools out there did exactly what I wanted. I had to spend a lot of time looking at it on my phone and making sure everything worked on my phone. But all of their applications out of the box do.
When you're building a story map, there's actually an option when you pick some of the apps that you can test it on what it would look like on different phones.
I'm going to show that just a little bit because there are, like I said, there are tons of just simple little basic viewers down to like this one's a very interesting map, like an impact summary. So if you have some data, it will work. You can work with like census data where you have your boundaries and it can go calculate data, demographic data out for you within some distance. There's social media one that will help you look at Twitter things coming in. If you have a Twitter account, you can then search for Twitter feeds. We did this at the Office of Emergency Management. We played around with this. During a storm when we're activated, we're watching the Twitter things coming in where people were talking about tornadoes. Was anybody talking, or wind? You also get a lot of garbage where people are talking about wind and tornadoes, but if somebody said, oh my gosh, I just saw, my roof just blew off, or the neighbor's roof just blew off, and they tweet it really quick, you can see those kinds of things popping up. So it would be good in that kind of situation. Like I said, there's routing and directions, and all these templates. In addition to that, there is something called Web App Builder, which is going to be for the people who want to take it a step further. And in Web App Builder, and this is again all online, you don't have to download anything. Now we tend to download them afterwards because we always make some kind of tweak that's not really part of the tool. Inevitably someone says, I love it, but can it do this? And that's the one thing it can't do, so we have to go customize the code. But we had the good starting point. We didn't have to do anything. So this is Web App Builder, and I can go in here and add all kinds of widgets. I can say, hey, you know what? I want to add a coordinate widget. So I'm going to turn that on. I want coordinates to, I think I turned it off actually. Turn it back on. So I can add, I want a home button. I can then go in and start adding all these different types of widgets. Our CIB viewer, I don't know if anybody's seen the new capital improvements budget viewer that's out there. Last summer we had an intern come to work with us from getting her graduate degree at TSU in GIS. And she came in and she put together, using Web App Builder, our CIB viewer for us. It's not ultimately where we want to be with the viewer, but this was a great starting point to let people look at the capital projects, look at the funding sources, filter through different funding years and stuff in our capital improvements budget. And there's tons of tools out here available for them. So one of the things about Arcgis Online, though, I want to explain is that it is a credit-based system. So certain things you do in Arcgis Online use credits, and you have to buy a certain number of credits to do these things. We have like 50 ArcMap licenses in our office. So with that, we get 50 named users in ArcGIS Online, and we get a certain number of credits per user. But certain things take up a lot of credits. If I had a 1,000 record file of addresses and I want to geocode that and put points on the map for those locations, that uses a lot of credits for some reason. And if I want to do some spatial analysis, like I might do an ArcMap on my desktop, but I want to do it in ArcGIS Online, some of those things can be use a lot of credit. So you kind of just have to watch yourself and make sure that you're budgeted. So in our organization, we've allocated everybody a certain number. And then if they are like really doing something they need to use more, well, we can give them more credits. But it's easy to use them all up and not know that you've even done anything. Like, what? I just tried that little button there, and I tried it 10 times. And all your credits are gone. So that is one of the things you kind of have to watch a little bit. If we move to Portal internally, it has all the same functionality internally, but it doesn't use you have named users, but those named users you can do as much stuff as you want. It doesn't use credits. So that's where we'd like to move for internally. We'd like to implement Portal, which is basically ArcGIS Online inside Metro. And then people will be able to push because they're going to be linked. I think by this fall, Portal and ArcGIS Online will be linked. If you've got it on Portal and you like it and it's great and you've been using it and now you want the public to see it, you can push it up to ArcGIS Online. So that's our plan, move forward. But we do have a lot of ArcGIS Online accounts for staff in our office that are never going to use it. And ESRI recently told us that we can share those with other departments. It doesn't have to be our people in our department to use them. So if anybody's interested in really diving into this in a department and seeing what they can do for their department using ArcGIS Online, contact me. We can get you an account. We can give you a little bit of a training on how to do it. I gave a little training to the mayor's office staff, and they've been off using it. And now I'm getting just requests, hey, can you add this data set up there? Can you add that data set up there? And then things like geocoding and stuff, you have a big spreadsheet of points. We can geocode those for you, give you the file back. You can upload it to ArcGIS Online and use it. So you won't use all those credits and things like that. So there's things that we can help you out. And if you're like, no, that looks scary, I don't want to create a story map, but I want a story map, or I want an application, that is what my staff in my office is there to do. So the way our director looks at it is GIS is there to help all of Metro. Even though we're in the planning department, our job is to help all of you use GIS, and so we can help you there too.
So I had a question about the story map.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible you're showing current pictures, is it possible to show a historical picture before and then the current picture so you can see the change? So as things are changing,
and there probably is. Some of that might take, like if you would publish one image out that had the before and after picture, you can certainly then have them side by side saved as one image, where you've done a little editing in Photoshop or something. And in fact, there is now a plugin for ArcGIS Online for Photoshop. If you're a Photoshop user, there's plugins for this for Microsoft Office products as well, so you can put interactive maps in your PowerPoints and things like that. But yeah, you can do that. There's also what we did for one of the story maps is a comparison map where we did the old floodplain, and then they were adopting the new floodplain, and you could swipe back and forth and go to your parcel and see how the floodplain was going to affect you before those actually got adopted. So we are looking at that with some historical data. We have some old historical maps that we have georeferenced that we would like to move through time. They also do have one that you can step through time and look at the images. They have a lot. And then what they can't do, what we want to do is get this into your hands to do stuff, so that what you might not be able to do, that's what we can focus on. So like our emergency response viewer, that's something where we have to write code, where we have to program. It needs to do a lot of things that aren't out of the box. But if we're able to give these tools to you to create your own stuff out of the box, then we can spend more time on those custom apps or more difficult apps, like the new sidewalk ordinance that came out. That is a very complicated application that we can spend time on, and you guys can go off and explore and do your own thing. So, yes.
Is there the potential for crowdsourcing, so inviting the community to contribute to a story?
Yes.
Is there the potential for crowdsourcing? So can we invite community members to upload pictures or identify points of interest?
There are. So during Nashville Next, so one of the things we did during Nashville Next is we used a story map. We kind of brought it in-house and changed it up a little bit. But we used a story map to collect input from the public on the concept map that was coming out. So people could step through the different portions of our concept map. They could step through green infrastructure. They could step through our centers and corridors. And then they could online click on a place and comment and give us data back. And we used that during the process. We would get all those comments back. We would go to the next step and then show them what we did based on their comments. I expect during redistricting that will come up again with the next census, when we redo our political districts, our council districts and stuff. We did a lot of community input during our last redistricting. I expect us to do a lot of online type capture of data. The other thing we have in the house that we just got is something called App Studio, which allows us to build apps that are automatically formatted for every environment. So they're automatically compiled to work on every phone, Windows tablets, just regular Windows computers. And they're collector type applications, or survey type applications. So you can give them out to the public with a set of questions that you want answered, and they can go at a point and collect a point and fill out your questionnaire and collect that data. So we have the ability to do that now, and we'd love to be able to have a situation to use it. So if anybody's got ideas on something, well, I have a survey right now I'd like to put out there, we'd like some kind of application to test that with. Yeah.
So what's the difference between the public art map that you just, what's the difference between the public art, what's the difference between the public art map that you just made and then the open data mapping?
So I see the open data, to me, this is just my opinion, I see the open data mapping as a place for users to be able to not to explore the data, but to be able to use the data in their own applications they may build. So that it has a common API that they can use. They can export the data and use it how they want to do it. They can combine the data. They can, and like with the new stuff that's coming out, they can look at trends in the data. The story map, to me, is on our side, us telling our story, how we want the story told. And so, like when the people from the Cherry Blossom, they came, they're like, we want people to see the tree, all the locations or trees, so that they come to the festival and they come and explore it. If we put this map out, we want them to see the cherry blossoms in bloom, so they know what they're going to see when they get out there, and what it took to get all these plantings going on, and how we're working with different people to make this happen. So to me, that's what the story maps are about. And it's Metro presenting their data in a way that maybe is a little bit more refined or targeted. So I'm of the more. Our parcel viewer is not this, because we constantly are asked to add more layers to it. Can you add more layers? So it's an all-in-one kind of thing where you go and you can turn on everything. But a lot of people like somewhat of a targeted app. I want to see parks, and that's what I want to see. Nashville Vitality uses our underlying maps, and is a park-based find recreation mobile app that Metro has to go find parks and things like that on their phone while they're out. So it's a targeted app, and that's kind of what these apps are meant to be. Is just kind of like a targeted thing. And sometimes they're only meant to last for a few weeks. Like, one suggestion I always give is drop-off sites for Christmas trees after Christmas. There's places you can go and drop off your Christmas trees and put up an app for that. And how long would that last? However long they keep those open to collect your Christmas trees. Some people don't take their tree down for a long time, and it's sitting in their yard, and they finally do. But, just putting up, maybe not a story map, but a quick little map. The other things with these maps is they can be embedded. You can create a little URL to embed them in other websites. So I don't know how much in Nashville.gov it can be embedded, but not all the departments are using necessarily the content management for Nashville.gov, or you can give the code to another organization and say, we want you to embed that you work with. We want you to embed our little map of our locations in your map, and you can share your little URL with them to embed their map in the code. So.
I was just going to say, Jennifer, MNPS is going through their version of Nashville Next right now, and we're going to have some community meetings again in September, and so I might reach out to you on the survey piece, because we've done the Survey Monkeys, but it might be nice to try and tie the visual aid to it as well.
And really quickly, in terms of surveys, ITS also has an enterprise license for Granicus, which used to be called Gov Delivery, so that's another option, and you can reach out to me, and I'll put you in touch with Josh Holloway, which would be josh.holloway@nashville.gov, and he can give you more information on that.
Cool.
I'm going to edit that out, right?
The story map without photos, what do you see? They have to have photos? Or?
No. I wish I had the story map up. Let's just go.
It'd be like a block of text.
Yeah. I'm gonna go and see if they can. I'm just gonna go through the gallery. So they've got a whole. If you need ideas on what people have done in other cities for their story maps, you can go to this page and go to their gallery, and you can say, okay, crowdsource. Here's an example of different people have registered their thing. Find your beach. Let's see, there's different types, so I want to look at one. Swipe and Spyglass. So here's today. Here's what I'd like to do for Nashville. We have this data right now. This is this is like a little spyglass you can pull around the map to zoom in. You can zoom in on the map, and it's their old historical. And the spyglass is showing what's there today in this location of this old map. And it doesn't take, it takes, for us to do this today, I actually have our 1871 map. We have it georeferenced and scanned and actually published as a layer. So what it would take for me to do it, and I also have our 2016 imagery scanned as a layer. So this is a tool that I could set up out of the box, have our historic map as one, have our imagery in the little spyglass, and I've set up an application. For me, I have tons of ideas that I would like to do and things I would like to do, but then I have the things that I have to do each day. And so I try to sneak these those things in, but we have other staff in our office that can set these up for you. So if you no, I have the data, here it is, I want a story map, which is what the library did. We have staff that can do that and can set those up really quickly for you. We can share it out to the public. You can put the links to it on your website. So anyway, so this one doesn't have any kind of pictures to it at all. It's a type of story map. And then let's see, bulletin. This is kind of what we did. Not exactly, but it's kind of, we did a bulleted one for Nashville Next. So it didn't have any pictures. It was text. We actually used story maps during the early voting. So our intern also that was here last summer put up for early voting, did a little map of the early voting locations, and then had a bulleted thing down to the side that explained each voting location and their hours for early voting. I mean, probably not how I would have done that map, but it was pretty cool that I said, here's the data, create a map, create some kind of map, and she did a story map. And the Election Commission liked it, and they used it during both early voting sessions because they didn't have a map. They didn't have anything up with the early voting locations. We had it up for all the regular voting locations. We have an application for that and how to get there where you're polled, where you actually are supposed to vote during a general election. But for early voting, we didn't have those sites mapped, so she came up with a story map. But here's an example. So the Smithsonian did one, and you can just step through. It's kind of... And here's where they've embedded in their page, so they can... These are just different images across the world, and they have a little bit amount of text about it. So any kind of any kind of locations where that you, so I guess it's just the like crop circles type thing. Any kind of, well, we're kind of interested in. We have a lot of David Klein, our office likes to do historical research and stuff, and we have some of these old books, old catalogs listing old businesses, like a phone directory from long ago, and so to go and be able to, go to these sites today, and this is what used to be here, based on that phone directory that said what used to be at 2nd and, Broadway on the right corner was this, and be able to just, especially if you can find a picture that went along with it and then take you and show you what's there now, or do a 3D version of what's there now. So in our office, we have someone that's collecting building footprints all the time and collecting the heights and the roof types, so that's helped Micah a lot, and to have a base for the whole county.
We have a 3D base map. We just haven't started using it yet because of the credit usage issue.
So, but yeah, we're excited. We're excited. Anybody that would like to get started and do some stuff, we would like to help you out. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you both so much. That was incredibly fascinating, and we will look forward to the opportunity for demonstration. I got so excited about seeing their presentation that I forgot to do what we normally do to start a meeting, and I know we've already lost Ryan, but I'd like everybody to introduce themselves, and we are going to start in the back of the room. Alex, actually, would you start since you're, and then Roy, I'll have you go, and we'll come back this way.
Alex Rose with the National Tech Council.
And actually, we could do this, so everybody can see everybody else.
Roy Stone from Finance Department.
Marla Greer from Human Resources.
Blair Atkinson, I'm an intern at Nashville Tech Council. Jessica Ciceroth, I'm an intern at Nashville Tech Council.
I'm Jim Diamond from the Health Department. Ian Myers, Arts Commission.
And actually, while you're doing this, if you had any ideas that got sparked from this presentation, go ahead and mention them.
Glenn Arnold, Public Defender's Office.
Lisa McClendon, Criminal Justice Planning.
Hi, I'm Nick. I run code for Nashville. Will Stoker. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista member in the Mayor's Office.
Hi, Tanaswa Tavaziva, also in the Mayor's Office.
Sandra Chapman, Nashville Electric.
James Gray, Metro Parks.
Tammy Johnson, MTA.
Justin Cole, MTA.
Hi, Raquel Qualls-Hampton, the Health Department, and I do have ideas. They're sparking off like wildfire right now. But one of the really cool ideas that I have is we're doing some mapping, looking at life expectancy using a specific statistical tech methodology to look at life expectancy at the zip code and census tract level, and then using other data to overlay that map. And right now it's just kind of 2D static. I would love to pick your brain to see how to make that more interactive. Okay. So when we start to present that information to the public and to the board and so forth, that they can be engaged in that information.
Right. That's great, because think of anything that you can one of a good example is we were asked like to look at land values and land values over time, and you can take that land value that are to parcels and then extrude it so that you can zoom around in it and have different colors and heights and stuff based on the values or change in land value over time. So you see where all the changes have occurred in the city. So that's great. That's exciting.
Brinka Thompson. I'm the Health Equity Fellow at the Metro Public Health Department.
I'm Scarlett Miles with the Historical Commission.
Laura Hansen with Metro Nashville Public Schools, and I, of course, have tons of ideas, but as you were talking, there's a couple that stuck out to me, and I really am interested in doing even some of the 3D stuff or the virtual stuff. So, for example, and just a couple of, I'm going to limit it to two because it's just this time of the year, but transportation for our young people. You know, the safety of bus stops, to overlay our actual bus routes with bus stops, to look at the sidewalks that are there or not there, to be able to actually take someone from a house where they're expected, you know, to walk to school from, you know, a mile away, actually do from a child's perspective. Walking along, if you could put, you know, if we know what traffic patterns are about how many cars in certain times of the day, which I think we've got some of that data, to really look at the fact that we've got young children walking with no sidewalks at busy times of the day, and just put that into some sort of visual for people, I think could be really powerful to understand the importance of sidewalks, especially in some of our lower income neighborhoods where more folks walk than have cars. So, and metro bus stops as well. Yeah. You know, you see them in some of the funniest places, like where there's absolutely no shoulder, and how safe is that? So I think it's an opportunity to kind of get people connected with that. The other thing is, and I'm looking at Samantha as well, the student mobility. And I know her office is looking at that. We always have issues with the mobility, but being able to map some of the growth of Nashville, whether it's housing prices, things like that increase, and map that with we'd have to look at doing some individual data, you know what I mean, using some scrub data, but looking at movement patterns of families over time as things are happening. We are losing students, we're losing families, looking at where they actually move, because everyone talks about mobility, but I really don't think it's such a complicated thing depending on where you are in the county. Understanding exactly what's happening and being able to visualize that in a powerful way.
Paris Mithala, Metro Nashville Public Schools.
I just want to follow up on that. There's a professor at Meharry, Wansu Eam, who designed this sort of interactive mapping application called Mappler, and they have mapped and actually did this with students in 2 of the schools here, mapped sort of safe routes to schools. So the application works where you they deploy kids and they have an instance of kids and their parents, an instance of Mappler, and then they walk the route to school and they take pictures of obstacles or lack of sidewalks. And I was wondering if we might do something similar, because that is a private commercial application rather than something for us, but it's interactive. So school by school, everybody could be involved in doing that. And then actually, if you go a step further in terms of sort of open data and school curriculums, right, this is a real citizen science, getting, it has the opportunity to get a lot of different people involved in thinking about those. So if we could maybe do something like that, that would be great.
My name's Hung. I'm an intern at ITS working with Robin.
I'm Samantha Perez with the Metro Human Relations Commission, and one thing that I thought about, our office worked with a coalition of nonprofits in the community to create what they call Respect Nashville, which is a platform to report incidents of bias. And I haven't seen the data, so I have no idea how many people have reported, but I thought it would be really interesting to be able to map that, because I think we do ask for location. And just to be able to sort of see on a map where people are reporting incidences of bias, and that was loosely defined, so what type of bias, and to be able to sort of think about interventions and sort of localized interventions, I think that would be kind of a cool idea.
Marvin Haywood, Metro Water.
Terry Edwards, Nashville Career Advancement Center.
Buick Harbison, Metro Social Services. Never said that. But what I was thinking about, probably social service agencies and because we deal with a lot of eviction and housing, if we could map that.
We actually did last year, so that's interesting. Last year we were asked by a council person to map evictions from the sheriff's office data, and so and that's data that they'll share with us. So last year we mapped. It was an odd map they asked for: evictions with MTA stops, and we also had schools and their report cards that we got online for reading. It was an odd combination of things that we put together on a map, but the eviction data is data that we have. And we have, Section 8 is harder to get to map, but we have mapped it in the past, but we do also have the Barnes Fund properties and the low-income tax credit properties mapped and things like that. And we are supposed to be eventually working towards an affordable housing type application.
Do you have a catalog of all your like an inventory or a catalog of all your mapped assets? There are so many, it's really hard.
I was like, before I came today, I was going to count it. I was trying to count up the data layers that we have, and I just lost count. No, that's really something we need to work on. And I have some of it we've started somewhat of a little catalog multiple times, and then we get different data sets in, and then we forget to catalog them. But we have, 200 or 300 data sets probably. And we get a lot from other departments, and some of them we get yearly, some of them we get every day, some of them we're getting once a week from different departments. And we're trying to be the kind of storehouse for everyone to access that data.
Terrence Rich, Social Services.
And I think that maybe all of us, actually I'd like our camera crew to introduce themselves. It's so gracious to come.
I'm Lee DeGraff-Reed, MNN.
Danielle Vaughn, Metro National Network.
All right, thank you so much. So now we're going to close the meeting. Hopefully we're officially on time, and I think that we are going to have a demonstration for anybody who wants to come up and put the headsets on and see the 3D. We have the room until about 11:15, so I encourage you, if you haven't had bagels and donuts, there are many left, so please have some before you leave. And thank you so much for coming. We'll be back in this room on August 16th. I'm moving backwards.